My daughter forgot to hang up the phone. What I heard next destroyed me, but it also saved my life. I was 68 years old, sitting alone at my kitchen table in Denver, scraping the last bits of meatloaf onto my fork. Leftover meatloaf, 3 days old, because cooking for one person never feels worth the effort. My wife Ellen used to make this recipe every Sunday. Hers always tasted better. Mine just tastes like loneliness. The phone rang just as I was about to rinse my plate. I glanced at the caller ID and smiled despite the emptiness in my chest. Madison. My daughter. My only child. Dad, how are you holding up? Her voice carried that familiar warmth that always made me feel loved and alone at the same time. I settled into Ellen's old reading chair. The leather worn smooth from 23 years of her sitting there with mystery novels and evening tea. Oh, you know me, sweetheart. Just finished dinner and was about to watch the news. I didn't mention it was leftovers from 3 days ago. I didn't mention I'd been staring at Ellen's photograph on the mantel for the better part of an hour, wondering if 2 years was long enough to stop missing someone. Are you eating enough, Dad? You know you can order groceries online now, right? I showed you that app last month. I'm eating plenty, I interrupted gently. Though my hands were already reaching for something to say that would keep her on the line just a little longer. I did have a little scare yesterday, though. Forgot to turn off the burner under my coffee pot. Good thing I smelled it burning from the living room. There was a pause on her end. I could picture her frowning in that way she'd inherited from her mother, that same little crease between her eyebrows that Ellen used to get when she was worried. Dad, maybe we should talk about getting someone to check on you more regularly. Her voice had shifted slightly, less warm. More practical. I'm fine, Madison. Really? How's your business trip going? You're in Phoenix, right? Yes, the conference ends tomorrow. Brandon's been handling most of the client meetings while I sit through these endless presentations about digital marketing trends. She laughed, but it sounded forced, rehearsed. Listen, Dad, I should probably get going. Brandon and I have dinner plans with some potential investors. Of course, sweetheart. I love you. Love you too, Dad. Take care of yourself, okay? I heard a click, then rustling sounds. She must have dropped the phone in her purse. I thought, reaching to hang up my end. But then I heard voices. Muffled, but clear enough through her phone's microphone. Brandon, did you see how he's deteriorating? Madison's voice. No longer warm and caring. He forgot to turn off the stove yesterday. What if he burns the house down? My hand froze on the receiver. Ice spread through my chest like I'd swallowed winter itself. It's time for a nursing home, Madison. Brandon's voice, cold and matter-of-fact, like he was discussing a broken appliance. He's becoming a burden, and you know it. Your dad's a good man. But he can't live alone anymore. Burden. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. The house is worth almost $1 million now. Madison's tone had shifted to pure calculation, the way she probably talked about quarterly earnings at her marketing job. With Denver's market, we could probably get $900,000, maybe more. Exactly. Brandon sounded pleased, excited even. We could sell it. Put him somewhere decent, not too expensive, and finally buy that house in Boulder we've been looking at. The one with the mountain view. My daughter laughed. Actually laughed. God, you should have seen him tonight. So grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea we're planning this. The longer we wait, the more confused he'll get. We should strike while he still trusts us. Completely. I already found a place, Sunset Care Facility, $4,500 a month. We put him somewhere like that, pocket the rest. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor Ellen and I had installed together 23 years ago. Every board laid by my own hands. Every nail driven with thoughts of our family's future. I sat in the sudden silence of my empty house, staring at Ellen's photograph. Her eyes seemed to bore into mine with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment. Warning. Or maybe just the terrible knowledge that comes to those who've already left this world. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Ellen's 15th anniversary gift to me, ticked steadily in the growing darkness. Outside, the first spring crickets began their evening song in the garden Ellen had planted and I still tended every weekend. Something cold and hard settled in my chest, replacing the warmth I'd felt hearing my daughter's voice just moments before. My hands, weathered from decades of construction work, slowly curled into fists. They thought I was a burden. They thought I was confused, helpless, ready to be managed and discarded. Like yesterday's trash. They were already spending my money in their minds, already planning their new life built on my grave. But I wasn't dead yet. And I wasn't nearly as confused as they believed. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after sitting too long, and walked to Ellen's photograph. I picked it up with both hands, looking into the face of the woman who'd known me better than anyone. Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. Ellen had said that years ago, watching me write another check for Madison's college tuition while we ate ramen noodles for the third night in a row. Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you, Roy. You're too good. Too generous. I'd promised. But I hadn't kept that promise, had I? I set Ellen's photo back on the mantel and walked to my home office. My hands were steady now, steadier than they'd been in months. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out a business card I'd kept for 3 years. Todd Fisher. Real estate attorney. Ellen had insisted we meet with him after her cancer diagnosis, just to make sure our affairs were in order. I stared at his phone number in the lamplight. It was time for another consultation. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Instead, I did what I've always done when the world stops making sense. I went looking for facts, for numbers, for proof that I wasn't crazy. I walked to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept old receipts and papers. Ellen always said, "Roy, you never know when you might need these." 20 years of financial records I'd never thrown away because my wife understood something I was only now beginning to see. I spread them across the kitchen table, these pieces of paper that told the story of my life. Our life. Madison's life. University of Colorado tuition receipts. $48,000 over 4 years. I ran my fingers over the faded ink, remembering those double shifts at the construction site. Coming home with concrete dust in my hair and plaster caked under my fingernails at 11 o'clock at night. Ellen would have coffee waiting. She'd massage my shoulders while I sat at this very table, calculating how to afford Madison's spring semester. Dividing our grocery budget. Deciding which bills could wait another month. "Roy, you're working yourself to death," she'd said one night. Watching me write another check. Her hand on my shoulder, warm and worried. "She deserves better than we had, Ellen. She's smart enough for anything." I'd looked up at my wife, at the gray circles. Listened. The wedding receipts were paper-clipped together. $32,000 for one day. One single day. I'd told Madison we could afford 5,000, maybe 8 if we stretched. But she'd cried. Actually cried, sitting right here in this kitchen. "Daddy, all my friends are having beautiful weddings. I don't want to be embarrassed. Please." So I'd worked weekends for 6 months, installing hardwood floors for a contractor friend who paid me under the table. Cash money that went straight into Madison's dream wedding fund. Ellen and I ate beans and rice. Drove cars held together with prayer and duct tape. But Madison had her princess day. "Daddy, you're the best father in the world," she'd whispered during our dance, her head on my shoulder. Her white dress rustling against my rented tuxedo. "I'll never forget this. I'll never forget what you've done for me." But she had forgotten. Just like she'd forgotten who co-signed her first car loan when her credit wasn't good enough at 23. Just like she'd forgotten who made the phone calls to get her that marketing job when she was unemployed for 8 months after graduation. I found the bank statements from 2 years ago. After Ellen died. After the cancer took her and left me alone in this house we'd built together. Madison and Brandon had moved in temporarily. "Just until Brandon finds something new," Madison had said. "He lost his financial advisor position. It's not his fault, Dad. The company was downsizing. They'd lived here for 2 years. I'd never charged them rent. Never asked for a single dollar. I'd paid the increased utility bills, bought groceries for 3 adults instead of one lonely widower. Brandon would pat my shoulder and call me the most generous man in Colorado. Madison would hug me and say, "Dad, we'll pay you back when we get on our feet. I promise." They'd been on their feet for over a year now. Both working good jobs. Both making more money than I ever had in my best year. But they'd never mentioned moving out. Never mentioned paying me back. I found the receipt from last month. Anniversary dinner at that fancy steakhouse downtown. $200 because Brandon said they deserved to celebrate their love. I'd paid. Smiled while I signed the check. Felt proud to be the generous father-in-law. The car repair bill was in there too. Brandon's BMW needed a new transmission. $3,000 that cleaned out my emergency fund. The money Ellen and I had saved for real emergencies. "Roy's like a father to me," Brandon had told his friends at their barbecue last summer, his arm around my shoulders. "I'm so lucky to have married into this family." I'd been proud. Actually proud to be the man who took care of his family no matter what it cost him. Now I understood the cost. I walked upstairs to Ellen's and my bedroom. Everything still unchanged after 2 years. Her jewelry box on the dresser. Her reading glasses folded beside the lamp. Her side of the closet still full of clothes that smelled faintly of her perfume. I opened the bottom drawer where we kept our important papers and pulled out the original house deed. Roy and Ellen Hayes. Purchased 1999. No liens. No co-signers. No complications. My name only now that Ellen was gone. I stood there in the bedroom where Ellen had spent her last days, where I'd held her hand while the machines beeped and she struggled for every breath. "Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you," she'd whispered near the end, her voice barely audible. "You're too good, Roy. Too generous. Promise me you'll take care of yourself." I'd promised. But I hadn't kept that promise. Until now. I looked at Ellen's photo on the nightstand. The one from our wedding day, her smile bright and full of hope for our future. Well, Ellen, our daughter definitely forgot to be grateful. But she's about to remember that her old man isn't as helpless as she thinks. I walked back downstairs with the house deed in one hand and Todd Fisher's business card in the other. The grandfather clock showed 3:17 in the morning. Too early to call anyone. But not too early to plan. I made coffee, Ellen's blend that I'd kept buying even though it reminded me of everything I'd lost. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by 25 years of sacrifice, 25 years of receipts that told the story of a father who'd given everything. And a daughter who'd planned to throw him away. By the time the sun came up over the Rocky Mountains, painting my kitchen gold with morning light, I knew exactly what I was going to do. At 8:59, I picked up the phone. At 9 o'clock exactly, Todd Fisher answered. Todd Fisher's office smelled like old law books and new possibilities. The law offices of Fisher and Associates occupied the second floor of a modest brick building on Colfax Avenue. The kind of place that specialized in helping regular people with real problems, not impressing corporate clients with marble floors and expensive art. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best suit. The charcoal gray one Ellen had picked out for me to wear to her funeral. My hands were only slightly trembling as I signed in. At the reception desk. Mr. Hayes, good to see you again. Todd was younger than I remembered, maybe 55, with graying temples and the patient expression of a man who'd heard every family horror story twice. He poured coffee from a small machine in the corner. I remember you and Ellen from a few years back. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you. I accepted the coffee, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I need to discuss something delicate about my daughter and son-in-law. Todd settled behind his desk, pen ready, eyes kind but professional. I'm listening. So I told him everything. The phone call. The overheard conversation. Their plans to sell my house and warehouse me in a cheap nursing home while they bought themselves a mountain view in Boulder. Todd's expression never changed, but I caught him shaking his head slightly when I described Madison's laugh. When I mentioned how she'd said I had no idea we're planning this. Unfortunately. Mr. Hayes, this scenario is more common than you'd think. Todd set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. Adult children often assume they know what's best for their aging parents. Especially when valuable assets are involved. My chest felt tight. But they can't actually do anything, can they? I mean, legally. Let's start with the basics. Todd pulled out a legal pad and began making notes. The house is titled in your name only since your wife's passing, correct? That's right. Ellen and I owned it jointly, but when she died, it transferred to me automatically. Then, legally speaking, your daughter and son-in-law have absolutely no claim to your property. Todd looked up, his eyes meeting mine with absolute certainty. They cannot sell it. Cannot force you into a care facility. Cannot make any decisions about your assets without your explicit consent. The house belongs to you, Mr. Hayes. Period. Relief flooded through me so fast I felt dizzy. Followed immediately by something sharper, harder. So if I wanted to sell it myself? Todd didn't even blink. You could put it on the market tomorrow if you chose to. It's your property. Your decision. He paused, studying my face. May I ask why you're considering that option? I thought about Madison's laugh when she'd called me a burden. About Brandon's cold calculation of my worth. Reducing 42 years of fatherhood to a real estate transaction. About Ellen's warning that I'd ignored for too long. They think I'm helpless. Confused. They think they can manage me like a piece of property. My hands clenched around the coffee cup. Maybe it's time I showed them exactly how sharp my mind really is. Todd was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward, his voice low and serious. Denver's housing market is incredibly strong right now, especially in your neighborhood. Properties in Cherry Creek are selling within days, often for cash offers above asking price. He paused. If you were serious about selling quickly, before your daughter and son-in-law return from their trip, how fast could it actually happen? My heart was hammering now. How fast? With the right buyer, and there are plenty of investors looking for properties like yours, we could have a sale completed within a week. Maybe less. Todd pulled out his phone. I know a realtor who specializes in quick closings. His name is Brian Connor. Best in the business for situations that need discretion and speed. I built that house with my own hands, Mr. Fisher. Every board. Every nail, every custom detail. I looked him straight in the eye. I know exactly what I'm doing. Todd nodded slowly, then dialed a number. Brian? Todd Fisher. I have a client with a property. You're going to want to see. Cherry Creek area. Original owner. Immaculate condition. Owners looking for a fast cash sale. How soon can you get there? He listened for a moment, then looked at me. He can be at your house at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Does that work? I glanced at my watch. It was just past 10. In 5 hours, a stranger would walk through the house Ellen and I had built. Together, assigning dollar values to our memories. 3 o'clock works perfectly. Brian Connor arrived at 2:58, driving a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than my first 3 cars combined. He was early 40s, professional but approachable, carrying a leather portfolio and tablet. The moment he stepped inside my front door, his eyes went wide. Wow! He stopped in my entryway, his gaze traveling up the crown molding I'd installed by hand to the hardwood floors Ellen and I had selected together 23 years ago. Mr. Hayes, this is exactly what I was hoping for. I watched him take in the details. The way the afternoon light streamed through Ellen's bay window. The seamless flow from living room to dining room that I'd achieved by removing a load-bearing wall and installing a support beam myself. You weren't kidding about maintaining this place. He pulled out his tablet and started taking photos. These hardwood floors, original. Installed them myself in 2001. Ellen wanted something that would last, so we went with 3/4-inch solid oak. I found myself falling into the familiar rhythm of discussing my work, proud despite everything that was happening. And this kitchen? Brian stopped at the granite countertop, running his hand along the edge with genuine appreciation. Custom installation. Every inch. I spent 3 weekends getting the measurements perfect. Ellen picked the pattern. Said the gold veining reminded her of sunlight. Brian was typing notes furiously, photographing the custom cabinets, testing faucets and light switches. Mr. Hayes, I have to be honest with you. In my 15 years doing this, I rarely see properties maintained to this standard. I'm an engineer. Was an engineer. I believe in building things right the first time. It shows. He gestured toward the living room. May I see the rest? I followed him through the house, watching him admire the built-in bookcases flanking the fireplace, the way the rooms flowed together, the custom bay window where Ellen used to read. Built it for my wife. I heard myself say. She wanted a reading nook. Brian took measurements, his excitement barely contained. Then he pulled up listings on his tablet. Mr. Hayes, I need to show you some comparable sales. Similar properties in this area have been selling for $850,000 to $920,000. He turned the screen toward me. But given the condition and custom features of your home, I'm confident we can price it at $890,000. That should move it quickly while getting you top dollar. $890,000. I sat down heavily in Ellen's reading chair. That much? Mr. Hayes, you're sitting on a gold mine. Brian's voice carried absolute confidence. Properties like this don't come on the market often, especially not in this condition. He paused. I actually have an investment group that's been looking for exactly this type of property. They pay cash. No financing contingencies. No repair negotiations. They can close in 10 business days. 10 business days. Madison and Brandon were returning in 8 days. What's the catch? I asked. Why so fast? No catch. Cash means no loan delays, no appraisal contingencies that could kill the deal. Brian smiled. They do their own inspections, but frankly, your house is in better shape than most new construction I see. He pulled out his phone. Let me call them right now. I sat in Ellen's chair, in the house we built together, and listened to Brian describe my life's work to strangers. Cherry Creek area, original owner, immaculate condition, custom features. Throughout, owner motivated for quick close. He ended the call with a broad smile. They want to move forward immediately. I can have the initial contracts ready by tomorrow morning. How does 9 a.m. sound? The grandfather clock ticked in the hallway. Outside, Mrs. Patterson was watering her garden, just like she did every Friday afternoon. Everything looked normal. Everything looked the same. But nothing would ever be the same again. I looked at Ellen's photograph on the mantel. Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you. 9 o'clock sounds perfect. 10 days to dismantle 25 years of my life. 10 days before Madison and Brandon returned from Phoenix. 10 days to show my daughter that her confused old father was sharper than she ever imagined. Day 1 started at 9 o'clock Saturday morning in Brian Connor's office. I signed the listing agreement with steady hands. Seller's disclosure. Purchase agreement. Inspection authorization. Each signature felt like cutting a chain I'd been wearing for too long. The investor group had one condition. They wanted their own inspection team to verify the property condition. No problem. Brian assured me. They'll be there Monday morning. This is purely formality. They're ready to move forward. I drove home past the park where I used to push Madison on the swings. Past the elementary school where Ellen volunteered in the library every Thursday. Past the coffee shop where we'd celebrated Madison's college acceptance with chocolate cake and dreams of her future. My future was happening now. And it didn't include them. Day 2, the inspection team arrived at 8 a.m. 3 men with clipboards and cameras and testing equipment. I watched them crawl through my attic. Examine my foundation, test every outlet and faucet. Sir, this is some of the finest residential construction work I've seen. The lead inspector, a man about 50 with kind eyes, shook my head. You did this yourself? Most of it. My wife and I, we built it for our family. He nodded slowly. Well, whoever buys this house is getting something special. Someone already did, I thought. Madison. She got 25 years of something special, and she threw it away. Day 3, I drove to Sunset Manor Apartments. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. Madison wanted to put me in Sunset Care facility. Instead, I was choosing my own Sunset Manor. The property manager, a pleasant woman named Mrs. Chen, showed me a one-bedroom furnished unit on the second floor. It's perfect for seniors, she explained. Community center downstairs. Weekly activities. Very quiet, very safe. I'll take it. Cash deposit okay? Her eyebrows rose slightly. Of course, Mr. Hayes. When would you like to move in? Soon. Very soon. Day 4, Todd Fisher called. Title search came back clean. No liens, no issues. We're on track for closing this Friday. I spent the afternoon packing. Ellen's jewelry box. Our wedding photos. The novel she'd been reading when she died, bookmark still on page 247. My engineering certificates. Her favorite cookbook with handwritten notes. In the margins. Everything else would have to stay. Madison and Brandon's belongings, I'd deal with those later. Day 5, my phone rang at 7 p.m. Madison. I stared at her name on the screen. My finger hovering over the answer button. Finally, on the 4th ring, I picked up. Dad, I have the most wonderful news. Her voice practically sparkled with fake enthusiasm. I gripped the phone. Tighter. Oh. Brandon and I have been planning something very special for you. She paused for dramatic effect. We want to treat you to a vacation. You deserve some rest and relaxation after everything you've been through since Mom died. A vacation. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. That sounds lovely, sweetheart. I kept my voice warm, grandfatherly. Just like she expected. There's this beautiful place we found. It's like a resort, but with medical staff on hand, just in case you need anything. Trained nurses, activities, everything. Doesn't that sound perfect? A resort with medical staff. Sunset care facility. $4,500 a month while they pocketed the rest. You really didn't need to go to such trouble for me. Nonsense, Dad. Your family. Brandon's voice came through in the background. He must have been listening on speaker. We've already made all the arrangements. When were you thinking? I managed to ask. Well, we should be back by Friday. Madison's voice was so sweet it made me sick. We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack some clothes and personal items. You know. The essentials. The essentials. Not the photo albums Ellen had lovingly arranged. Not the furniture I'd built with my own hands. Just the essentials for an old man being shuffled off to die. Actually, Madison, I have a surprise for you too when you get back. Oh Dad, what kind of surprise? She sounded genuinely pleased, probably imagining I'd signed papers or made their job easier. Somehow. It's something I've been working on since our last conversation. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Ellen had planted. I think you'll be very surprised. You're so sweet. Dad. We'll talk about everything when we get home, okay? Get some rest, and we'll take care of everything else. Sweet. She called me sweet while planning to steal my life. I will, sweetheart. I love you. Love you too, Dad. See you Friday. The line went dead. Day 6 and 7 blurred together. Brian called Wednesday. Closing scheduled for Friday morning, 10 a.m. wire transfer will happen same day. You'll have access to funds immediately. I drove to a security store Thursday morning. Spent an hour researching surveillance cameras. Finally selected a wireless mini camera hidden inside what looked like a phone charger. $149. Worth every penny. Day 8, Friday morning. 10 a.m. at the title company. The buyers were represented by their attorney. A sharp woman in her 30s who double-checked every document. Brian handled the paperwork like he'd done it 1,000 times. Mr. Hayes, if you'll sign here, and here, initial there. Each signature felt like justice. This is your wire transfer confirmation. $890,000, less closing costs, has been deposited to your account. I stared at the numbers. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. More money than Madison and Brandon had dreamed their burden could access. We shook hands all around. Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. Brian walked me to my truck. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what we need. Day 9, Saturday. Madison and Brandon were due back Monday. I called a 24-hour locksmith at noon. Emergency service. $200 surcharge, but money didn't matter anymore. Eddie arrived at 2. Changed every lock in the house. Front door, back door, garage entrance. $450 cash. Here are your new keys, sir. He handed me a ring of silver keys that felt foreign in my palm. These are top-quality deadbolts. Nobody's getting in without your permission. Perfect. After Eddie left, I installed the camera by the front door. Tested the app on my phone. Crystal clear view of the entryway. Then I took out the letter I'd written the night before. Read it one more time. Dear Madison and Brandon, if you're reading this, it means you tried to use your keys. They don't work anymore. The house has been sold for $890,000 cash. The money is safely in my new bank account, where it will stay. I've moved to a place where I'm appreciated, not tolerated. Your belongings are at Denver Moving and Storage on Colfax Avenue. You have 30 days to claim them. I gave you everything for 42 years. You repaid me by planning to warehouse me so you could steal my life's work. I hope the lesson was worth the cost. Love, Dad. I taped it to the inside of the front door at eye level where they couldn't miss it. Then I did one final walk through the empty house. Touched the mantel where Ellen's photo had. Saturday whispered goodbye to each room. It's done, sweetheart. Justice served. I locked the door with my new key for the last time. Day 10, Sunday. I sat in my new apartment at Sunset Manor with my phone in my hand, watching the empty doorway through the camera feed. Tomorrow, Madison and Brandon would return from Phoenix. They'd pull into the driveway of a house that was no longer mine. They'd try their keys in locks that had been changed. And they'd find my letter. I looked at Ellen's photo on my nightstand in this small apartment that would never hold her memories. I hope you understand what I'm doing, honey. The camera feed showed my empty doorway. Waiting. Tomorrow, my daughter would learn that her grateful old father had become her worst nightmare. Monday, 5:15 p.m. My phone buzzed with a motion detection alert. I was sitting in my small apartment at Sunset Manor, coffee growing cold in my hand, when the notification appeared on my screen. Movement detected at front door. My heart started hammering as I opened the camera app. There they were. A black SUV, Brandon's car, pulling into the driveway of what used to be my house. The house that now belonged to strangers. The house Madison thought would make her rich. I leaned forward, phone clutched in both hands, watching the small screen like it was the most important movie ever made. Madison stepped out first, stretching after the long drive from Phoenix. She was wearing expensive sunglasses and a business suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She looked tired but pleased with herself. Brandon emerged from the driver's side, pulling their suitcases from the back. He was already loosening his tie, clearly ready to be home. Except this wasn't their home anymore. They walked toward the front door with the casual confidence of people who had no idea their entire world was about to explode. Madison was saying something. Probably complaining about the traffic or the conference. Brandon nodded, distracted, checking his phone. Normal. Everything looked so normal. Madison reached into her purse, fishing for her keys. She pulled them out, selected the house key, and inserted it into the lock. The key didn't turn. Through my phone speaker, I heard her confused grunt. She pulled the key out, examined it. Tried again. Jiggled it. Nothing. That's weird. Her voice came through crystal clear. My key's not working. Brandon set down the suitcases, frowning. Let me try. He took her keys. Tried the lock himself. Same result. His frown deepened. Maybe it's stuck. Madison's voice had an edge of concern now. Try the back door. I watched Brandon disappear around the side of the house. While Madison continued struggling with the front lock, trying her key over and over like it might suddenly work if she just believed hard enough. 3 minutes later, Brandon returned. The camera caught his face perfectly, and what I saw there made something warm spread through my chest. Fear. The back door's locked too. His voice was tight. And the garage remote isn't working. Madison, someone changed these locks. What? That's impossible. Madison's professional composure was cracking. Dad doesn't even know how to call a locksmith. Brandon examined the front door more carefully, his financial advisor's mind finally recognizing trouble. These are brand new locks. These aren't the brass ones we had. He looked at Madison, and I could see the panic starting. This isn't an accident. Madison pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. I'm calling Dad. I watched her dial my old landline. The number I'd disconnected 5 days ago. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. No voicemail. Nothing. Her face went pale. No answer. It's not even going to voicemail. It's just ringing. Try his cell phone. Brandon was pacing now. He doesn't have a cell phone. Remember? Madison's voice cracked. We talked about getting him one for emergencies, but we never did it. Brandon was examining the windows now, desperate. There. That one's unlocked. I can boost you up. I watched my 42-year-old daughter climb through my kitchen window like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. Her business suit caught on the frame. She struggled. Ungraceful and panicked. She disappeared inside. Moments later, the front door opened from within. Madison stood in my entryway, and that's when she saw it. The white envelope. Taped to the door. At eye level. Her name and Brandon's written in my careful script. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. Brandon stepped inside, suitcases forgotten on the porch, and read over her shoulder. I leaned closer to my phone screen, not wanting to miss a single second of their faces as they read my words. Madison's eyes moved across the page. I could see the exact moment she reached the part about the sale. Her face went white. Then red. Then white again. He sold the house. Her voice rose to a shriek that probably scared Mrs. Patterson next door. How could he do this to us? How could he? Brandon snatched the letter from her hands, reading it again like the words might change. That manipulative old bastard. His voice shook with rage. He was playing us the whole time. Listening to our conversation. Planning this. $890,000. Madison was crying now, her expensive makeup streaking down her cheeks. He kept it all. That money was supposed to be our future. We had plans. We put a deposit on the Boulder house. Your future. Brandon whirled on her, and suddenly they weren't a team anymore. This is your father, Madison. You should have handled this better. You pushed too hard. My fault. Madison's voice went shrill. You're the one who said he was becoming a burden. You're the one who pushed for the nursing home. You're the one who said we deserved that house in Boulder. Well, he was a burden. Brandon gestured wildly around the room. Look what he's done to us. We're homeless. Our lease at the apartment expires next week. We gave notice because we thought we'd be moving here. We lost our $5,000 deposit on the Boulder house because we couldn't secure financing without this sale. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. They were fighting in my living room about being homeless, just as they'd planned to make me homeless. Call a lawyer. Madison said desperately. There has to be something we can do. He can't just sell the house without telling us. It's not right. It's not fair. With what money, Madison? Brandon's voice dripped with contempt. In case you forgot, I lost my job 6 months ago. Got fired for questionable transactions, remember? And your marketing salary barely covers our car payments on that BMW I just had to have. Then get another job. Find something. Where do you think? Financial firms are lining up to hire advisors who got fired for ethics violations. Brandon laughed, bitter and harsh. Your dad co-signed our car loan. You think he didn't withdraw that when he sold this house? That BMW's getting repossessed next week. Madison sank onto my couch, the burgundy one where she used to do homework as a teenager. She buried her face in her hands. How could he be so cruel? She whispered. Brandon stared at the letter in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Defeated. The same way you were cruel when you called him a burden and planned to warehouse him. Madison. The old man was smarter than both of us. He heard everything. And he beat us at our own game. Madison looked up, mascara running, hair disheveled. Nothing like the confident businesswoman who'd climbed out of the SUV 20 minutes ago. What are we going to do? Brandon crumpled my letter in his fist. I don't know. Through my phone screen, I watched them sit in silence. Broken. Desperate. Facing consequences they never imagined. I watched my daughter realize that her confused old father had outplayed her completely. I watched them understand that their greed had cost them everything. And I felt nothing but peace. I turned off the camera feed. I'd seen enough. Walked to my small kitchen. Opened the bottle of Ellen's favorite wine I'd saved from the house. 2018 Bordeaux. We'd been saving it for a special occasion that never came. Tonight was special enough. I poured a glass and raised it toward Ellen's photo on my nightstand. 2. You, my love. Justice served. They learned what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. My phone buzzed. Text messages from unknown numbers. Madison trying to reach me through every method she could think of. I deleted them without reading. Powered off the phone completely. Tomorrow, she'd probably try to find me. Call hospitals, police, anyone who might know where I'd gone. But Roy Hayes had left the building. And he was never coming back. I woke up Tuesday morning in my small apartment at Sunset Manor, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel the crushing weight of loneliness. I felt free. The morning light came through different windows now. Smaller windows in a smaller space. But they were my windows. My space. My choice. I made coffee in my tiny kitchen and sat by the window, watching Denver wake up below me. Somewhere across the city, Madison and Brandon were dealing with the consequences of their greed. Somewhere, they were learning that their burden had teeth. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop called Brews and Views. The kind of local place Ellen would have loved, with mismatched furniture. And art from local painters on the walls. You're new around here. The barista, a young woman named Sarah with purple streaks in her hair, smiled as she made my coffee. Just moved in. Retired engineer. I handed her cash. Looking for a quieter life. Well, you found the right neighborhood for that. She handed me my cup. Most of our regulars are pretty mellow. You'll fit right in. I sat by the window with my coffee, watching people walk dogs and push strollers. Living normal Tuesday mornings that didn't include revenge or betrayal or broken families. My phone, powered back on, showed 43 missed calls. 17 voicemails. 32 text messages. All from Madison. I listened to the first voicemail on speaker, Sarah too far away to hear. Dad. Please call me back. Please. We need to talk about this. There has to be some kind of misunderstanding. I love you. Please just call me. Her voice was desperate. Crying. Nothing like the woman who'd laughed about me having no idea she was planning to warehouse me. I deleted it without listening to the others. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. By the end of the week, I'd found my rhythm. Morning coffee at Brews and Views. Afternoons in the community center at Sunset Manor. Evenings reading the books Ellen had always wanted me to try. Thursday night. I joined the poker game in the community room. 5 other men, all retired, all with their own stories of long careers and longer lives. You play cards, Roy. George, a retired teacher with kind eyes and weathered hands, dealt me in. Not in years. But I'm willing to learn again. We played for quarters and told stories. George had taught high school English for 40 years. Frank had been a plumber. William, a Vietnam vet. Tom, a postal worker. Richard, a mechanic. Nobody asked about my family. Nobody pressed when I said I lived alone. They just accepted me as Roy, the engineer who liked his coffee black and his poker hands conservative. That's worth more than $890,000. 2 weeks after the reckoning, a certified letter arrived at my apartment. Madison's handwriting on the envelope. I opened it standing by my window, watching the sunset paint the Rocky Mountains gold. Dad, I made a terrible mistake. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know how sorry I am. What Brandon and I planned was cruel and selfish. You deserved better. You deserved respect and love, not calculation and greed. I understand if you never want to see me again. But please know that I'm sorry. I love you. I always will. Your daughter, Madison. I read it twice. Felt the familiar ache of love mixed with disappointment. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to respond. Maybe someday the hurt would fade enough to rebuild something. But not today. Today, I had coffee with Sarah at Brews and Views. Today, I had poker with George and the guys. Today, I had my dignity, my freedom, and my self-respect. Today, I had enough. I walked to the community garden behind Sunset Manor and planted tomatoes. Ellen's favorite. My hands in the soil, the Colorado sun warm on my back. Roy, you seem at peace. George had wandered over, curious about my planting technique. I looked up at him, this stranger who'd become a friend without expecting anything from me. Who valued my company without calculating my worth. For the first time in a long time, George, I am. That night, I sat in my small apartment with Ellen's photo on my nightstand. The same silver frame that had sat in our bedroom for 23 years. I kept my promise, honey. I whispered to her smile. Frozen in time, forever young and hopeful. I took care of myself. I stood up. I didn't let them take advantage of me. Somewhere across Denver, Madison was living with her choices. Somewhere. Brandon was facing his consequences. But Roy Hayes was living his life. On his terms. With his money. With his dignity intact. I was 68 years old. My wife was gone. My daughter had betrayed me. My house belonged to strangers. But I was finally, truly free. And sometimes, freedom is the best revenge of all. Roy's story teaches us something powerful. Respect isn't given because of blood. It's earned through actions. And when family treats you like a burden instead of a blessing, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. For 68 years. Roy gave everything. His time, his money, his sacrifice. He built a life with his own hands, raised a daughter with unconditional love, and asked for nothing in return except basic human dignity. When Madison and Brandon saw dollar signs instead of a father, Roy made a choice that many people his age are afraid to make. He chose himself. And that's not selfish. That's survival. If you're watching this and you've ever felt taken for granted by family, remember Roy's lesson. You are not a burden. You are not too old to start over. You are not powerless just because you've been generous. Your dignity matters. Your peace matters. And it's never, ever too late to stand up for yourself. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to make a tough choice like Roy? Would you have forgiven Madison, or did Roy do the right thing? This community thrives on your stories and your wisdom. If this story moved you, smash that like button. Subscribe to John's Revenge Stories and hit the notification bell so you never miss another tale of justice served. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they matter. And if you're ready for another story about family betrayal and perfect revenge, click that video on your screen right now. Remember, you're never too old to choose yourself first. Thanks for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next story.